Welcome to this session, a session called AI Foundations, creating the ideal platform for your company's AI ambitions. Many of your companies probably have AI ambitions, and many of your companies already have deployed the first AI applications. McKinsey recent study showed that 72% have already deployed an AI application themselves or are testing in that area. And so many of companies started doing that in a public cloud environment. Functionality is available, quickly up to speed, and you start working on something. Now, also many companies realize after a while, is this now the right platform for my future AI applications? Am I able to use this platform maybe for AI applications linked to sensitive data? What about my data protection and data sovereignty? Do I need to think about that? So that's why thinking about which is the platform for the future AI is crucial, and that's what this session is going to be about. Today I'm thankful to be joined by Tom Olislagers, Chief Technology Officer at Dell. Dell is a long-standing valued partner of Proximus Next. We work together very closely over the last years and decades. So I thank Tom to be here because Tom will give us a bit of insight what we need to think about, but also Dell themselves, and I didn't know a while ago, also have great solutions when it comes to AI that enables AI. So Tom, I give you the floor.
All right.
I'll see you back for the Q&A.
Super. Hey, thank you very much, Joris. Honestly, I had great fun preparing this deck for you. I'm very happy to be able to work on AI teams within Dell, both from a company perspective, but also personally. So let me start with the question, who of you is already using ChatGPT or Copilot from day to day in their work? Quite a lot of people. Me too. I use different flavors depending on what I want to do. And you see that the quality is increasing of those models dramatically. Now you can all imagine as users of those tools that ChatGPT, Copilot, they answer in a couple of seconds. If you give them now an hour to think, you would drastically also improve the quality. And that is about inference. So executing an AI model, we call that inference. And I think that the future of the quality of AI is there, where you run the model and how long you let it think before it gives you answers. So the session today is about choosing a good platform, building a platform for AI, and some things to think about when you're doing that. So let me first introduce you to Dell Technologies. Most people know Dell from the laptops, from the hardware, the servers, the storage equipment that we sell. Those are of course our core markets that you can see here on the slide. But it's very important, we have strategical directions from our global CTO John Rose, which are to the left of this slide. Of AI is one of those. It's one of the key areas where we invest, and already for a couple of years. Since we invest in it for a couple of years, that means we're building quite some successes. So in the Belgian market, we have 20 use cases at different industries and production at the moment. We have about 30 ramping up, working together with great partners like Proximus Next. So internally within Dell, we spend quite a lot of time working on AI. You see we do quite a lot of investment in R&D. We're one of the biggest firms in the AI area, infrastructure area in the States. That also means we have quite a lot of patents and we have a lot of software engineers. By the way, that number should be 89 at the moment, since we're still ramping up this capacity. We do realize that the hardware is a commodity sector and our value is the software that we build into the appliances. But we don't only do internal innovation, we also do that externally. So we have a venture capital arm that's not that well known, but that's Dell Tech Capital, and they invest in startups. So on the area there on top, you see quite a lot of startups in which we're invested in AI, and sometimes we insource those companies completely. One of the last ones that we completely insourced is Moogsoft. So all of the Dell equipment that you have in a data center will call home, will report on its condition. That goes to a standard platform we call Cloud IQ, and now we built in predictive maintenance with AI based on the software capabilities of Moogsoft. If you want to build your own platform for AI, I think there are three crucial, maybe philosophical questions that you need to think about building out this platform. First, I think in the AI area, it's evolving that fast that not a single company can really lead it. And that's why it's very important also to manage the cost aspect, to look at an open ecosystem and look at the capabilities of open source and what's going on there. Secondly, I do think it's very crucial that you think about where do you put AI, where do you run it. You will see we will come to a world in which AI will be run across different locations in the cloud, on the edge and in the data center, depending on the sensitivity of the data. And last but not least, hardware is not always the most sexy part to talk about with regards to building out AI use cases. We do think it's crucial that you reuse the knowledge that companies have, building platforms for other companies to get you started in a very easy and a very quick way. So that's the gist of this presentation, and we will now elaborate a little bit more on that. So if you first talk about an ecosystem.
If you need anything in IT, anything in computing and enterprise, you know exactly who to call. You call Dell.
For the ones speaking Dutch, you might still remember that commercial from WC Eend. Wij van WC Eend bevelen aan WC Eend. I strongly believe that's the case. So of course, being from Dell, I'm going to say good things about Dell, but I do think it's much more credible if somebody else says it. So in this time of deepfakes, this is still a real video. So we tricked Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA, to say something positive about Dell, and of course everybody has a mobile phone, we had that on camera. But there is a very good reason why Jensen is that optimistic about Dell. The reason is that we do quite a lot of large deals together. We're building out the whole platform for XAI of Elon Musk at the moment. It's giant. But we, Dell, we are also the biggest customer of NVIDIA. So they sell quite a lot of equipment to us, and we work very strongly together on AI environments. But it doesn't stop with NVIDIA. So as I said, not a single company can really lead AI. And that's why it's very, very important that we build out an ecosystem. And that's what we've been doing for a long time. And the heart of the ecosystem is also the local partner that we work with, like Proximus Next. Why is that? Because they bring the knowledge of the customer, which is crucial in really building out cases that bring business value to a customer. You need to be relevant in the cases that you build. So we have experience with a lot of partners, silicon vendors, but also software providers. Now the trick is, I don't have that slide in my deck, but there are thousands of softwares and hardware companies, etc., that you can work with to build an AI stack. And then the question becomes information overload. What am I going to do? And that is the value of Dell. We've been deploying on-premises infrastructures for AI in such a large quantity worldwide that we can leverage from the knowledge. I'm not thinking we build the sizes of XAI within Belgium, but on the other side, if you can build such an architecture that you can scale down, to build that architecture you must know how to eliminate bottlenecks, talking about storage, servers, networking, how to connect that all together. And based on those lessons we build out platforms that we call the AI factory, and we can scale them down in t-shirt sizes towards the right use case for your company. And that starts from a couple of servers, that doesn't have to be a full rack or a full data center. In the ecosystem we work together with multiple partners. Of course the crucial one for us is Microsoft. We have a very close alliance with them. So going to the slide on Azure, we see that many of our customers, they are very satisfied with running parts of their workloads in Azure, but sometimes they have critical data. Think about defense industries, police departments, justice departments, etc., that have sensitive data in their data center, but that still want to leverage the AI experience from Azure. Well, building, nowadays since a week it's called Azure Local, building that out in your local data center, we can bring the Azure APIs for AI into your data center and process your data locally. But going to the open source world, which is really booming in AI, so if you look at a leaked paper, Google has no moat, which is publicly on the internet. It's an internal report of Google saying they cannot maintain for a long time a competitive position in building a closed source model like Gemini. It's the same for OpenAI, building ChatGPT. They see that the open source community is just a couple of months behind them in the quality of the models that they deliver for free. Even in building smaller models that run directly on smartphones, etc. So this is definitely not something to be ignored. Many companies run open source models for their AI. Why is that? First, the cost is controllable because you just run it and you own it yourself and it's free. But it's also about software management. If you have an application with the built-in AI part as a reasoning engine in your application, you want to control yourself when you roll out a new version of this reasoning engine. So as you know, ChatGPT, for instance, releases quite a lot of new versions. It's not always publicized how long the older versions will still be available. Imagine that the results of the answers of the model, yes, they become better overall, but that in your specific use case you get other results than the one you tested when you set the application into production. So also controlling both the cost and also when you put into production new versions of your reasoning engine with the large language model is important. There are more than 300,000 models that are freely available on Hugging Face. Does that mean that just running whatever in production is the way to go? No. We as Dell do have a partnership with Hugging Face in which we have an enterprise space with pre-tested models that are secure to use in a production environment. And one of those models is of course the very popular model. Llama 3.2 is the latest one from Meta. Meta is very smart. In the beginning, one of their first models leaked. Students from Stanford took it over, and that's why there is an alpaca model existing. They made an open source variant. And after that, Llama was open sourced. Because Meta knows that to own the integration and to be the player in that area, they want everybody that is building their own AI products to use their model as the standard of the model to integrate with. And they're doing that fantastically well. So they're the most commonly used open source systems. By the way, yes, the Chinese at the moment are a little bit better in performance, but that's not always at the moment what we want to run. So different models. Bringing AI to your data. We did a questionnaire across 500 customers, different sizes, different continents, to ask in fact what do you do with regards to AI. So we see that 16% they prefer to run the models in the public cloud. And that also has to do, of course, with a lot of customers that start to adapt Copilot. Why is that? Because it's an internal use case. If I use Copilot, there is still a human in the middle that is going to check if that generated email is going before it's going to send out. It's also, in fact, automating and making life easier for basic mundane tasks, like writing an email. And that is fully okay to run that in the public cloud. Now you see more and more that as people start thinking about very custom use cases, they want to control the large language model, but also if they have external users outside of their company, then suddenly paying by token in some models is becoming very hard because they cannot predict how many users they will have and what the cost will be. And that's when they start to go in open source solutions, some of them really training their own model. What we now see more and more is companies that don't want to spend the investment to train, but they take an open source, they take Llama, and then they're going to adapt it a little bit. We call that retraining. You need a lot less resources for that, but you adapt the model with your own company knowledge. And that is very important. And that's also why open source is important. The weights are publicly publicized. That means you can adapt the open source models, which is not something you can do with the closed source models like the ones of OpenAI. Why is that important? Because if I now say Joris, for the people that know Joris, Joris is very well, he knows his customers well, he knows the inside of the products and the offerings from Proximus Next, and that is what sets him apart. It's not just general public internet knowledge and speaking a language, which is making Joris a great guy to work with. It's his knowledge. And it's the same with large language models. A model that is publicly available, trained on internet data, doesn't contain the sensitive and proprietary data of your company. If I have two retail players, and I have a certain purchasing cost at which they buy a component, the one player is a cost player. They want to sell at the lowest price. The other player is integrating this component in a shared offering. They have nice customers' experiences around it. If they have both the same purchasing price, for one company it might be too expensive, for the other company it's okay because they have margin. And that means if you want to really have an AI that on the long term is thinking with you in what you want to do in your company, you need to be able to adapt it to the way that your company works. So that will evolve over time, but we will see more and more requests to really customize the model, because we know from experience and also the answers that you get from a model are much better. And that's why we have these open source things. And then of course we have the 38% which are using a hybrid strategy, and this is really the future. So they will decide, depending on the sensitivity of their data, to sometimes use models in the cloud and then sometimes use models on-prem, and they make a mix. If we look at use cases, this slide has a dual purpose, so it's a list of use cases, you will get it. It's also an eye test for the people at the back. If you can read this, then you have perfect eyesight, okay? There is in fact no excuse to get started with AI. Honestly, sometimes I get into debates with customers and they talk about problems with the EU Act and they don't know, and hallucinations, etc. The reality is that it's not going to change the world immediately. For your first use cases, you have to find things that are easy, that you can also accomplish, not high in the sky things. But what is very important is to start at a minimal scale with some experiments. Because that whole question around, for instance, hallucination, from the moment that you start experimenting, then you will see for real what that hallucination is. Depending on your use case, it can be very minimal, and we're wasting time talking about nothing. So experience beats philosophy in this case. It's moving very fast. Get started with AI. Of course, you cannot do all of the use cases at the same time, so it's very logical from a business approach that you're going to categorize them. You look at the business value, but also, of course, in the feasibility of those use cases, because that determines if they're going to go to production, which is in the end what we want, and the cost of it. If we look at technical capabilities that are very feasible and that are common in many use cases, you see them at the bottom of this slide. Everybody knows content creation, but let's talk about digital assistants. We often talk about the quality of the response of a large language model, but you should also realize that's not the end of the story. It's not just the content, it's also the way how a large language model can give the answer. I can ask my question stating, I want you to give this answer to a child. I want you to give this answer in the form of a fairy tale. And then the whole methodology, how the answer is conveyed, is also adapted. So if you think about customer service, I do agree, if I call a help desk and I get a real human that really wants to help me, that's great. But we also need to acknowledge, I think, that most times we call a service desk, we have to wait 10 or 30 minutes before we get somebody on the line. And in some cases, those people are treated like robots and they have to follow a script. Honestly, many of us will recognize the feeling that we do not feel served at that moment, we feel processed. With digital agents that are trained on the company content, that adapt their style, that have little knowledge about if this person wants a short or a long answer, that have a little bit of background, 24/7 they're available. You can spin up as many agents as you want that are instantaneously responding to calls or answering towards chat. Yes, you need to take care of the quality, yes, you need to test it, but we see many companies that have procedural chatbots, of which nobody really is happy, starting to embed large language models in a gradual setup. That's digital assistants. I do have beautiful demos on that. If I can visit you one day with digital humans talking to you, it's nice to see. Natural language search, well, if you can just express yourself in plain English or French or your own language, by the way, those bots adapt to your language. You can just ask a question like you would ask a question to a human. So for those who still remember asking or teaching grandparents how to use Google, you need to use keywords and and or, etc., and then you go to all the links. All of this is gone. This is one of the reasons that you will see silicon vendors, Microsoft, embedding AI, a large language model, as key part of their operating system over the years. That will come to fruition. That's what we see with Copilot plus PCs, that's what we see with Apple AI, etc. Code generation, it doesn't replace developers, it helps them become a little bit more productive or finding stupid code punctuation errors, etc., etc. document generation in highly regulated industries. Why writing all that boring documentation with minimum input? They can format it like the way you want to have it documented. We see that coming back a lot. With regards to those use cases, depending on the area where you are in the business, you can go for in you can take it easy with customization, just running models that are open source, adapting a little bit by supplying your own data, making it your own model, etc. And depending on that, you will also make sure that you do the right-sized investment in it. For experiments, you start very small. At home, by the way, personally, it's Black Friday. I just bought myself one of these for my own bots, but that's me. But you can go larger in it. After that you've experimented and you're getting excited about certain use case, then you run it on service, you go into production. And that's when you think about, I have one AI use case, one AI application, I add it as an application in my data center. To build that application, you will need to clean up data, and at a certain moment you will come to the conclusion that that same cleaned up data can be used for other use cases. And then you get more and more use cases, and then you start building AI platforms and seeing AI as a user of your company data and not just as an extra application. And then we go in this direction. We need not just developers in the beginning, but we need data scientists, data engineers, and we build that out. We already talked about the Copilot plus PC, so I'm not going to give all details there. But think about this, the recall feature, which was taking screenshots continuously of what you were doing, which you could then use to find back data on your laptop or to make your life easy. Microsoft pulled that back and they didn't release it yet because people were concerned about privacy. Honestly, I think it's funny that they're concerned about what they're doing on their laptop, but not always concerned about where they send their company data to if they send it to a public model. I do think that's also important to think about, and this privacy debate will help talking much more about sovereign AI, privacy of data, controlling the AI in your own data center. And last but not least, of course, you need a platform to run that on. This is a quite specific thing. It's a slide about hardware. I do imagine that, but the reason that I put this in is because we have something unique on the market. Many people now want to buy additional GPUs. And then the question is, the server is already 2 years old. Do I add in a GPU if it's still only remaining 2 years? What kind of GPU do I use? How many GPUs do I put in? Some of the servers can only fit 2 and I need 8. What do I do? This beautiful thing we have on the market is a sort of chassis in which you can put 10 GPUs. And then you're going to use a switch and connect them to your existing servers. And on the fly with software, you can then say that GPU needs to be now connected to that server. Instead of 2 that are physically only possible to install on that server, I want to connect 10. I'm using it over day for my VDI. At the night, I want to train a model, so I'm allocating them to other servers. And at the moment, we're the only ones in the market that are able to supply that. A chassis with dedicated GPUs, 10 GPUs per chassis. Of course, you can put less, and you can stack chassis going to 30, 40 GPUs. You can choose to mix AMD, Intel, NVIDIA GPUs, and then check, because Intel and AMD are a lot cheaper, but do they work as well? So you can check, dynamically allocate them. And going into the AI factory. So the AI factory is really a completely built, pre-tested, validated, t-shirt sized environment that we roll in. Not just the hardware, but also the software on top of it. If you're standardized on Kubernetes from OpenShift, or Red Hat, or Ubuntu, Canonical, or VMware, we have reference templates for all of those, and we completely roll it, the whole stack, including the software, including the NVIDIA software. And that means NVIDIA always brings these nice stories about NIMs, so reusable templates to run a certain model of AI. Is it vision detection? Is it large language, etc.? So we built a stack completely with that on top so that you can start immediately leveraging it. By the way, not just the stack, we can also supply, for instance, a sort of demand management layer so that multiple users can self-service, can get environments, and that they are automatically load balanced across the platform for your different teams. Because if you have a stack, but then you need to manually allocate parts of it to certain teams. It's still quite user unfriendly. Starting with AI can be very daunting. We started ourselves 2 years ago. We had 200 use cases. We drilled them down to 60. 6 use cases are specifically sales oriented. I'm working on all of those. I use them and I influence the roadmap on that. But how did we do that as Dell? There's a whole long story, but I will just use one slide, and this is also my last one. We built out this strategic roadmap in which we, you cannot see it that well, but you will see it when I send the slides. But there is an as-is part, so we index what do we have, what data sources do we have, what is the to-be environment, how do we want to serve data scientists going forward, and then also what are the issues that we commonly have that need to be solved. Is it scaling, is it self-service, how do we go there, this is a project plan, what are the projects that we need to do, what kind of specialists do we need, and what would be the business case and the benefits that we can bring to the table. This is a roadmap that we can build together with customers. We do that for free. You don't have to pay for that. The only thing that we require is that you bring the right people, that we have a dedicated half day in which we're interviewing those people, then we collect that info and we bring you back this result. And that we do together with Proximus Next.
Proximus Next. Think possible.